Hold on. Beard looks crazy. That changed it. All right. So last week we talked a little bit about press because we had a tiny bit of press and brought up some stuff about what is press and how does press work. I ended up talking to some people, some just random different people about different things, and um, what was what got brought up to me. I was talking to somebody who we're going to start talking a lot about in yield, in the context of yield, about sort of non-traditional physical media. That whole conversation was starting to get really going with this artist and sort of some releases we're thinking about doing. Probably going to talk about that next week. Within that framework, something that I've talked a lot about, especially to my friend Rachel, who's in her free time is a manager of bands. It's like kind of the different mindsets that different people related to an artist and a record have about records, if that makes sense. And sort of, well, let me go back. So, well, yeah, Brad Rose and I have talked a lot about, man, doesn't the press cycle suck? Doesn't it the sort of like, traditionally 6 months down until a record comes out, you do some sort of announcement. 3 months, you do some sort of announcement. You put out an EPK at a certain amount of time. You put out videos a certain amount of time. Before that, you have to harangue people for coverage leading up. And then you want certain things the week of. You want certain things the day of. And then a couple things a week after. And if you have maybe some things to revive the press a week or two later, maybe you get a little bit of reviving the press cycle. If you get a tour right after, stuff like that. But you're really locked into this cycle, and it's all this sort of what I've started to say, build and burst cycle. Doesn't that suck? And doesn't that leave good records behind if they just happen to? It's a window based. If you happen to miss the window, doesn't that kind of suck? And that's a conversation that's been going on forever. I think it's more and more relevant as things are falling apart. It's like, what are we talking about worrying about a press cycle if there's no press, if press doesn't matter? And so I've been talking within this framework of just rethinking everything, right? I was talking to this artist, Steve, who we're going to talk about a little bit soon. We were talking a little bit about like, there's a different mindset that artists have and managers have. Sorry if I kept trying to bring all these threads together. But there's a different mindset that artists have, or a manager might have, like a manager of a band might have to a record or an artist's career than a record label has, or a PR person has. And I think a PR person, it would be so cool if I was advanced enough to go like draw what I'm going to do. Also, I think I'm mirrored, so looks bad. So let's do that. But a traditional PR cycle, again, is trying to put a lot of effort in, build, and then it kind of has this quick tail of shelf life. And it kind of creates this mentality of, if you don't hit your window around press, around the release date, around the newness of a record, it kind of quickly becomes dead stock. And we have this concept of dead stock. And I was just watching another record label's content, and they were talking about some things. It's like this idea of like, well, now I got a clear space in my storage. I have some storage here, and I have a storage unit, and I do a lot of release sales where I'm just clearing dead stock, and I do a lot of putting older records into. Again, when you order something from me, you usually get two things because I just want people to hear the music, and it's not really clearing dead stock always. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's very old stuff. But the thought that record has gone has rotted. That like somehow I don't care about that record anymore. That somehow that record is now gone bad. Doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make any sense because I cared about that record deeply when I put it out. And yes, I think there is this thing that gets trained into you because probably early on in your life as a label, yeah, some of your earlier stuff does taper off pretty quickly into, we're doing a lot better than we used to. And so that earlier stuff kind of does have this like stink on it. Well, that was a little bit more aggressive than I meant, but you know what I meant. It has you're stepping up your quality, so your earlier stuff feels different. You're like, oh, do I want to represent myself with my earlier stuff or my current stuff? But the truth is, stuff, I mean, I've been at this for a long time. The stuff I put out 3, 4, 5 years ago is some of the best stuff. It's these cornerstone releases. It's these should be the tree, the shade that all the new records are growing under, you know? And so what's wrong with that model and how can we make it better? And there's also this approach to that model that I think other labels and other artists will see some similar feelings as. I think my cat just jumped into my sink, maybe. Which is the model of like gambling. Like it feels like slot machines. It feels like hole tabs is that's too small of a metaphor, but it swings at the bat. It feels like this record is going to be the record that does well because every 1 in 10 does well. And when something does well, it gives you that same dopamine burst of like, hey, I did it. We're doing well. And when you're thinking about a record, you're holding a record, you're designing, you're like, what if this one did pretty well? That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. That'd feel great. And when it does do work, it does feel pretty good. By the way, it almost never feels the same level of good as you thought it was going to. At least not for me, because our brains are wired weird. You know, whatever that axiom about something positive never feels as the goodness never feels even close to your bad things or whatever it is. I don't know, butcher that. Anyways, but there is this gambler's mentality of like you're and which creates not only like it's kind of a bummer that we're all looking for the hit instead of just that's the mentality we're getting into. Because yes, of course, records is kind of an 80-20, some do well and some don't. But it gets into this disposable nature of that one didn't work. What's next? Dead stock. And it really becomes this gambler's mentality of, well, or more like, give me more bullets in the gun. Give me more swings at the bat. You know, like what else can I chamber? What's next? What's next in the chamber that I can, you know, how many chances do I have? How many tickets do I have? How many other metaphors can I come up with? But that does create a gambler's mentality. It creates a collector's mentality. It creates a gachapon mentality. But these artists, and I think it does somewhat for the artists, and I think that's flawed. That's really not the right way to build a career. And artists, and especially managers, if I was a manager, the point of a manager is not to go with a record, it's to go and the next one. But that other one's still going. And you're building this sort of multi-record catalog that is growing alongside you. And to spoil my metaphor, you're planting seeds, they are growing. And these seeds are on different stages of growth. And certain ones will do really well, and those will become the trees in your garden trees, orchard. Sure, really nailing the metaphors today. Uh, so yes, so it's a different mentality. It's this mentality of gardening versus gambling. Um, really trying hard to to get to my concepts, but yes, I do think that there's a difference between gardening and gambling, and I think a label in the modern age when the press cycle doesn't fucking even matter anyways. Yeah, when you're putting out 10 or 20 things, this is going to be hard to manage, but that's why you need to partner with your artists. And you need to all get into that managerial, I'm curating my career mindset and partnering into this idea of we are all gardeners of these records and we are planting the seed, and that work on that record starts very early and probably needs to be very vocal about that record well before any traditional press cycle would start and much after any press cycle would end. And your idea is that you are building this into this legacy and you're trying to build cornerstone canonical releases for the label that are, I mean, I have Danny Paul Grody records right here. You know, like I want to talk about that like every week that I put up the most incredible Danny Paul Grody record on vinyl, but it's like a few years old now. I put out the Fabril records, you know, like Mari, like that should be like these are these tentpole things about Debacle Records to me. All the stuff with, you know, like kind of being the person that got to do first records from Elkhorn and Hayden and, you know, now David and you know, all this stuff. Like these are things that I think are identity making. But if you get too much on the treadmill of what's next, what's next, what's next, you start to lose that. And so we have to figure out ways to become gardeners, not gamblers. And yes, certain seeds you plant will grow better, but you still need to nurture them the whole time instead of just going, did it do it? 4 week cycle? No, this one didn't work. And I'm talking to myself here because I'm the king of this. And I've actually shortened my press cycles very tightly because I was getting the same value out of a long press cycle as I was from a short press cycle. And I had a lot of things I wanted to do. And so I'm starting to get into this mentality of just, you know, I feel like I'm opening Pokemon packs. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm, you know, at my worst, you know. I'm just trying to get better about all this stuff. And so I want to start, I mean, this newsletter is a great example of like I'm showing you uh songs and ideas of records that are, you know, some of the stuff when we're starting to talk about like, hey, what are different things we can do with records? That's talking about records that don't exist yet. And then some of this is just stuff that just went to press that there's no way you can, it wouldn't be responsible at all to even give you pre-order links for. Um, and I'm going to continue to talk about, you know, records that came out a while ago. Like, how many of you know this record? Even recognize this record? Came out a few shit years ago now. I need to start putting dates on my records. Do I? I don't know. This is Fabril, the second Fabril record, The Rot. I should probably put this out on vinyl soon. This is this is the opposite of the doesn't need physical. It needs probably more physical. Don't have a ton more copies left. CD. This is Mari Maurice and a bunch of folks. Alden Jenkins, Mari Maurice, Matthew Seidel, and then live, I think they added one more person. This is, I don't know if you've never heard the Fabril pitch. Mari, the first record was just Mari, and it was like her like hard rock, interfacing with hard rock. It sounded like Smash Pumpkins and Hum and Nine Inch Nails via that whole vibe that they had, you know, Claire and her had figured out, that bedroom kind of emo ambient sort of thing, but done so amazingly. And this is more of a full band vibe. You know, I think a lot of it is still just one or two people arranging it, but sometimes it also has Alton on drums, and it just, I don't know, go listen to it. It's incredible. It's like an industrial, kind of very modern internet age industrial It's industrialization. I always talked about it's industrial via PHP BB boards. You know, it feels like the ephemeralness of like the internet that is falling away from us. The rot is digital rot as much as it's anything else. Um, Such a good record. Such a good record. Such an incredible artist. Such a different side of the artist. I mean, they're out there doing just incredible work in New York right now, just and all over the world, and just every project is some new crazy thing. But like this is incredible. And I think if they hadn't moved, she hadn't moved from Texas, that band would have been going and going and going. The first live show, you can watch videos online of people like taping the first live show, and it was just so amazing for the release of this. Anyways, I'm rambling, but the point is, I should be talking way more about this record because it's an incredible record of recent past. It still should be growing in the garden more than it is. How do I do that? How do I figure this out? Okay, let's talk about a seed I planted this week. I hope any of this made sense. We'll talk a little bit more about it next week too, but I hope any of this made sense. A few months back, I actually don't remember when, in the fall, I got a demo. I got an album offer from, email from somebody I'd never met, named the Verdin Brothers. I hope I'm saying that right. We've never met or talked. Two guys, as far as I could tell, brothers, working in this sort of pan-Americana style that I guess I'll just say, like, I think I said this to them. I don't know if I've ever gotten a more mature, complete idea just handed to me as a demo out of nowhere. It's an incredible record. It's kind of a stretch for Debacle in that it really could come out on. You could frame this record on everything from VHF to, God, I think it could be on Sub Pop. That's probably me being myopic to my own, like what's weird and what's not weird. But it's this kind of story form idea of like from everything the bluegrass to New Orleans stomping, and like it tells the story. It's like if Grails and like some post-rock stuff went even more Americana. Like I said, it would fit great on VHF, but it's more clean and beautiful and pristine. Like you could play this for some people in a Starbucks and they would be like, well, this is pretty interesting and intense, but it's well within my understanding. And I don't mean that as a knock. And they've been presenting all their music in a very interesting avant way, and they're not afraid to go places with it. And it's very cathartic, big, showy music. But they're also not afraid to use sounds that like even that VHF Tompkins, Americana stuff that we all kind of operate in, in this sort of revival of all that stuff. It's kind of, I've seen in my life, afraid to go places where they're afraid to go because they're like, no, that's not as cool. That hasn't been approved. That style hasn't been approved yet for the underground. And that lit me up. That made me so happy. And they just fucking rip. They rip. The record's so good. It flows incredibly well. I just couldn't believe how good it was. I was like, I'm shocked by how good it was. And so I jumped right on it and said, yes, I'd love to do something about it. We've been working on art and sort of timing and mastering and everything kind of finally came to a head. We got it all locked in. It looks beautiful. Again, the presentation even is more towards the avant side. They're splitting this difference between they could go play a random, more crossover folk event or bluegrass event or yeah, whatever event like that, but also could go play something with a lot of the weirdos, as much and be very well situated in both. And I think it's really good. I think it's really, really good. They seem to tour a lot and go play shows and really motivated. And um, it's really, really good. And you can't buy this yet. We just hit the manufacturer. Everything was just approved. Not exactly sure when it's coming out. I hope it comes out this year. Um, but I want to play you some stuff on the way out of this newsletter this week as a great example of I'm planting some seeds for you. I'm showing you this record. I hope to be talking about this record in 2 years as well, when we're repressing and repressing it, because I think it's got legs. This record's got legs. It is from a brand new artist. It feels like when I got that Elkhorn record, to be honest, where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know these people. I don't know how motivated they are. I wasn't out in the East Coast, so I didn't understand how motivated and connected all these folks were. So they were just kind of unknowns to me. But I was like, this is just so well done and so incredible, and there's no way I can pass this up. It feels a lot like that to me. It feels like when you get certain records out of nowhere and you're just like, yeah, I kind of have to do this. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. It is a burner. It is just so enjoyable. And it is the first record in a long time that as I play it around the house, which I do a lot, I've caught my son singing some of the more catchy parts. And I don't know if I've ever caught him singing any of my other stuff. So yeah, I'll have that be the outro to this. I hope this concept of how can we attack press cycles, I'm just planting it. I'm not really talking about how. I'm planting that we ought to change from gamblers to gardeners. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I just wanted to introduce the thought here and then talk about it more. I hope that landed. I definitely have said this pitch better in my head this week. But yeah, check out some Verdin Brothers. Had some tough family news come in last night, but keeping it together. Doing better about just getting out and talking to people and doing stuff. It's a weird time in the world right now. It's really crazy. But doing this has been so rewarding, so fun, and people contacting me and saying great things and being kind has been really, really nice. So I appreciate everybody who's been doing that. So like I say every week, take care of yourself, be kind to each other, and I will see you next week.